On today's episode of Locked On Lightning, we're unfortunately revisiting that loss to the St. Louis Blues the other night. We answer some fan mail and we talk about our expectations for tonight. All that coming up and more on Locked On Lightning.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Adam Tanker. Thank you for all tuning in onto this episode of Locked On Lightning. On today's episode, we'll be talking about that embarrassment of a loss in St. Louis. The Lightning look to possibly salvage their very short road trip tonight in Chicago. We talk about that as well. And we open up some fan mail. A listener request on Twitter. So we answer that question as well. But first, I got to remind you all to please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast and go ahead to follow us wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form, as well as to remind you that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. So, I wasn't able to watch the game Tuesday night. I will say it. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I did because I went out, decided to, go out, go to a sporting event. I actually went to the Nets game that they played the Orlando Magic for anybody that cares. That was a good basketball game all around. But I will say, you know what? I was keeping tabs on the game. And a couple of listeners on Twitter were so nice to send me updates throughout. And this is one of those games, and I say this all the time, but having been the one that did not watch it, I will say that this is one of those games where you didn't have to watch it to really know what went on. You could just look at the box score, and that is not a good thing when you look at this Tampa Bay Lightning team. And if you've been listening to this show since its inception, you know that I am a very, very much into the eye test. Stats don't play when a team is playing well. Stats aren't everything. When they're playing bad or underachieving, as the Tampa Bay Lightning have been for a majority of this season, then the stats are very glaring. They're very demonstrative of how the season is going. They're the only thing you could really fall back on if there's any sliver of positivity, and really there really hasn't been, except for, in my opinion, Jonas Johansson, who I think has been still, all things considered, I think has been having a very good season. And, there are some of you still out there that are still very much staunch on the opinion that once Andrei Vasilevsky comes back, that this team is going to do a complete 180. And I hate to tell you this. I hate to break it to you for the millionth time, because this is not the first time I brought it up. That's not how hockey works. The team, the skaters, they might make the goaltender better, but it's really very rare that we see that. And I can't really think of a scenario with any team in the NHL's history in which that has been the case. Now, maybe, there's a first time for everything. We might see that, but, when and if that does happen, we will talk about that. If it does indeed happen when Andrei Vasilevsky comes back after probably Thanksgiving, most likely the first week of December, then yes, then we could talk about that, and I will be the first one to eat their words here. But what we're really talking about is this St. Louis Blues game. Lightning, for the second straight game, were shut out, losing in this one 5-0. They had 30 shots on goal, 45% from the faceoff circle, 0 for 2 on the power play. And also the big, obviously, the storyline in this one as well was that there was no, well, actually, he did play. I don't know. Maybe it was the game prior. Maybe I'm mixing it up. I thought Kucherov didn't play, but he did. I'm probably thinking of the prior game against the Hurricanes. But the thing that is so frustrating about this, when you go up against a team like this, and let's face it, the St. Louis Blues are a team that, looking at their roster and having seen them play last year, and for the most part, their the core is pretty much the same. You look at this team, and on paper and on the ice, really, they're very beatable. They're a very manageable team. And especially when it comes to the goaltending, because I don't know about all of you, but going into this game, Bennington playing, I think that the Lightning should have been salivating, because Bennington, as we all know, in case you don't know, let me refresh your memory. Jordan Bennington is one of the most uneven, when it comes mentally and overcoming adversity, goaltenders really in the league. Doesn't take a lot to get under his skin, to get him going. And it doesn't really take a lot to really to start the avalanche really with him. And I really thought that was going to be the case. I thought the Lightning were going to go ahead and attack him early. I thought they were going to get a couple of good ones off early on in the game. And that wasn't the case. It wasn't the case whatsoever. They made Bennington look like himself from when they made that cup run in 19. And all I have to say about that is that that's really pathetic. That's really pathetic. And on top of that, side note, can the Lightning just not give up a goal in the first period? Can we consistently? They've had some games this year in which they haven't, and that's great, but can we do it consistently? And I know what some of you might be saying, that Johansson needs to be better. Johansson was making some great saves in this one. I saw some of those highlights. What more could you really ask out of your goaltender? Okay. Your guy goes out there, he's giving you a sliver of a shot. Now we could all agree, for as good as Johansson has been, he is not an elite goaltender. He is not a top goaltender. He has proven, though, that he can be a starting goaltender. And he could very well, because of how he has played, catch the eye of some some other teams, and possibly play into the Lightning's favor, where they could actually deal him at the trade deadline. We'll stick a pin in that for later. And if that's something that maybe the Lightning should explore, because goaltending is so valuable in this league. But when it comes down to the Lightning giving up early goals and being outplayed early on, that goes down to the skaters, the guys in front of him. There has been more shots this year, I could say, leading up to this game, more times where teams have had high danger chances, second chances, and have absolutely done pretty much whatever they wanted to do in the Lightning zone. For the most part, the Lightning have been dominated in the neutral zone all season long. And this was an opportunity, this game, for the Lightning to get things going. Really, let's be honest. In hindsight, every game is an opportunity to get things going. But when you go on the road and you play back-to-back teams, mind you, like St. Louis, who, right now, if you look at the standings in the NHL, one could make the case and say this looks like a playoff team. I would beg to differ. I would have to say, they're playing well right now. They're a team, and they're a team that, maybe at the trade deadline, if they go after a certain piece, maybe they could stay where they are right now. That they're in that second wild card spot out in the West, which hold on for dear life, because once Seattle, Minnesota, and Edmonton get going, and I know you might be laughing saying, well, Edmonton's garbage this year. Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl will probably have something to say about that. But if you look at those other teams behind them, once they wake up and get going, the Blues can't keep up with that. Now, on the other side of that, don't we all expect the Lightning to not only be a playoff team, but to be a team that finishes in the top 3? And as we all know, what the Lightning are accustomed to doing is it's almost a subconscious passion for them to play down to lower teams. And yes, I'm calling the St. Louis Blues a lower team because they are, because on paper and from what we've seen in the past from this team, that they are better than most. They're not the best. They are better than most. I will say that. So this was nothing short of an embarrassment. And spoiler alert, I expect the same performance until I see otherwise tonight against Chicago. So let me know in the comments below what you thought about this game. This was just, I hate to use the cliche, but this is a game that you got to file away and just move on from. It's super frustrating to see and hear John Cooper and co say, we're going to make adjustments. We've made adjustments. And you just see the same thing over and over and over again. Just like some people in the fan base, it seems as though this Lightning team is just waiting for Andre Vasilevsky to come back and fix all their problems. But well, guess what? It's not going to happen. So let me know in the comments below what you think about that. And make sure to subscribe to the show. Love hearing from all of you. And coming up, I love hearing from you, like I said. And coming up, actually, I heard from one of our listeners, and he requested that I answer a question of his from Twitter. So we will get to that. We're devoting a whole segment of that. Look at that. You answer a question, you demand it gets put on the show, and bam, you get your own segment. So we'll be talking about that coming up in just a little bit. But first, I want to talk about one of our friends, and that is our good friends over at Game Time. Now, if you haven't heard about Game Time, listen up. Listen, I use Game Time all the time when I go to sporting events. I told you I went to the Nets game the other night. I used it. It's the easiest way to get last minute tickets. They were super easy to download. I bought them that night and I got them in 20 minutes. Now, if you're like me, you do everything last minute. Game Time makes it easy, makes last minute look easy. Okay, Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. I bought last-minute tickets the other night on a killer Lightning deal, and guess what? Guess how much I paid for tickets? Now, if you follow me on Instagram, or maybe I'll post a picture on Twitter. Maybe we'll do that. But I got pretty close and we paid $40 a pop. So that tells you how awesome the last minute deals are. So you want to jump in on this as well. You got to, or you're doing yourself an injustice. So download the Game Time app, create an account, use that code Locked On NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. So as always, I want to thank everybody for making us your first listen of the day. And if you haven't already done so, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. We're also available on YouTube. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Hit that thumbs up button underneath this video so it helps the channel grow. It helps people see the video more. More people who may not be subscribed get to see it on YouTube and grow the channel and grow the podcast. So, like I said, if you haven't already done so, go ahead and subscribe, because when you subscribe, when you follow me on Twitter as well at DenkyDank, DENKYD8NK, guess what? If you ask a question, and I consider myself a man of the people, when you ask a question and you want me to answer it on the show, guess what? You're not only going to get an answer on the show, and especially if it's a good question, you're going to get your own segment. So shout out to my boy from Twitter, Joshua West, tweeted to me the other day. And here's your question, Joshua. Joshua tweeted to me, do you feel like there's something wrong with the Tampa Bay players right now? What are your thoughts on this? Because something is wrong. I mean, obviously something is wrong, Joshua. And thank you for the question. And thank you for your enthusiasm, tweeting to me almost every single day, or replying to a tweet or my tweets or whatever, about the Lightning. And as we bask together in misery here on Locked On Lightning, as well as on Twitter. Yeah, there's something definitely wrong with this team. I think, and I've kind of touched upon it on the show here and there. You know, I really don't want to go too overboard with criticism. I'll start off by saying that I think that this team has all the talent in the world, and I think that's why we get frustrated the way we do. And I'm not just talking about Joshua and I'm talking about Lightning fans, Lightning Twitter. I think that the problem when it comes to this Tampa team is complacency. I think that, and this dates back all the way back to 2020, I would say probably the summer of 21, going into the 21-22 season, I believe. And if you're forgetting, this is when the Lightning are coming off back-to-back Stanley Cup championships. And there was all this talk. They were making the rounds. I believe they were on the Merrick show. I believe some guys like Maroon went to Spit and Chicklets. I think Stammer was on there. I know Stammer was on Merrick. I know he was on 32 Thoughts. I think Hedman made an appearance. Long story short, there was a lot of Lightning players, Killorn, guys like that were making the rounds on a lot of the hockey podcasts and the shows. And everyone was asking pretty much the same question. You know, you guys have played a ton of games the last couple of years, especially with these seasons being so close to each other. Are you afraid that you're, and this is not word for word of what was asked, but basically it was asked, you know, how do they plan to approach the upcoming season? You know, playing as many games they have. Are they afraid of running out of gas? Or, you know, how are they gonna, what is the goal, I guess? You know, how high are they shooting for in the during the regular season? As well as, obviously, we all know the goal going into the third season, so 22-23, the goal was obviously, let's win 3 in a row. That's basically it, right? You're Stanley Cup champions until you're not. And everybody, especially Stamkos, which is, listen, at the time, you're on an incredible high. You probably haven't been sober in months. It's fine. Everyone was saying, for the most part, the mantra. I know Cooper was saying it going into the season, let's just get to the playoffs. And because we know what we could do then. And I felt uncomfortable with it at that point in time, because I felt like we were starting to lower the bar. And then we all know what happened. This team lost in the Stanley Cup final to Colorado, which I honestly think that even if you got a well-rested Tampa, which, you know, all things considered, you swept Florida that year. You were pretty much rested. You were kind of hanging out for a week. You get and when I mean, like, not played as many games, I still think Tampa would have lost that series. Probably not in 5, but I think they would have been a lot more competitive than they would have in those games, but that's a whole nother conversation. And I'm sure Chris Maselli from Locked On Abs and Kyle Sullivan have a whole nother opinion on that. But when you fast forward to the upcoming season after that, the same mantra, let's just get to the playoffs. The Lightning, in my opinion, have maybe one month really that we could look back on and have positive thoughts about. For the most part, I thought all last season was just everything that I've spoken about on this show for the last couple of seasons, where this team has really just kind of, like I said, started to lower the bar. And it was very odd considering they won back-to-back Stanley Cups. And I know it's just it was very much a far cry from what we felt like what the vibe was in 1920 and 2021. So then I just feel like the last couple of years, and even coming into this year, and now they kind of are, at least for those outside of the Tampa Bay fan base, for those who are kind of watching from the outside in, are kind of getting a little bit of a pass because of Vazzy being out, that I feel like now we're even lowering the bar like lower than it really has to be, where like if this team misses the playoffs, which I still don't think, all things considered, I still think they could make the playoffs. If they were to do that, I think a lot of people wouldn't blame them. Well, they got off to a crappy start. They didn't have Vazzy to kind of weather the storm. And I think that's what it is. I think this team has just gotten complacent. I think it started from the top. I think that JBB, he had 2.5 great trade deadlines and kind of dug himself this hole with the cap. I think he wasn't as proactive as he should have been. What I mean by that is, long story short, he should have kept Goodrow, should have protected Goodrow. I mean, we all knew that was something that needed to happen. Should have figured out some sort of deal to bring Coleman back. Should have kept that third line together. Should have found a way to get rid of Ruda, Killorn, those guys a little sooner. Maybe not have. I mean, listen, this is no knock against him. Maybe not have given Paul that long of a contract. I know with the cap eventually going to be what it is, that's going to look like a steal of a deal, and it will, but I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned about now, and that's how we should look at it. And then you go up down to Cooper. I feel like he's on this pedestal right now, as he should. He's the best coach in the league. But on the other hand of that, great coaches find ways to win even when your team is not playing well. And let's face it, this team has looked like a train wreck for the last month. And you mean to tell me because of one goaltender, I don't care how good he is, good teams find ways to win. And this team has looked completely outmatched against the better teams, as well as teams that really shouldn't be in the same weight class as the Lightning. And then you go down one level more and you look at this team, and it's, I know the leadership, the voice is still there in the locker room, but Stamkos isn't what he really used to be. We saw him take a dip last year in his performance. And then you look at the other guys around him, there's really nobody producing. This team needs a leader vocally and someone who's going to be able to put puck to ice and puck to net and show the leadership through the stats. And, I'm not saying that he's a bad person or he's a bad guy, but Kucherov really never struck me as that kind of guy. Yeah, he wears the A, and yeah, he's got all the talent in the world. On his best nights, he's top 5 in the league. But there's been too many instances over the last couple of years, as well as this season, where the team has needed him to be there, and he could have easily just not addressed that night, and you would have had the same kind of atmosphere. You would have never known that he would have been on the ice. So what I'm saying at the end of the day to Joshua as well as everybody that's listening to this in Lightning Nation is that this team needs the direction. They need direction. They need leadership. They need urgency. They need to get back to that hunger. And I'm not saying they're hunger, but it's a different kind of hunger. They don't have that we haven't been there before and we're dying to get there hungry, okay? We don't have that kind of hungry that we've seen going into that this team was exhibiting after they got swept by Columbus. And this team who has such high standards for themselves on a yearly basis, shouldn't you have that kind of hunger after losing in the first round to Toronto and kind of showing towards the end of that series that you were not to be meddled with and Toronto was doing themselves no favors by keeping you in the series? And look, they could have won that series. I think if they win game 6, it's over in 7. So I think that it's not so much about performance. I think it's everything that's going on upstairs in the head. I don't see the urgency. I don't see anybody getting mad. I just see everybody, when things don't go right, sitting on the bench, just hanging their heads and slumping their shoulders. I don't see the hunger. So let me know in the comments what you think about that. Joshua, thank you for the question. That was great. Love hearing from all of you as always. So if you have a question for the show, go ahead and tweet to me at DenkyDank, DenkyYD8NK. If you want to tweet to me there, or if you want to send me a message, DM me there as well. Or if you just want to, if you don't have Twitter but you still want your answer, you want your question answered on the show, go ahead and comment below this video. I would love to answer it on the next episode. I would love to get enough questions that where we could just do an entire episode of fan mail. So go ahead and do that. So coming up in just a little bit, we're going to be talking about our expectations for tonight against the Chicago Blackhawks. Lightning are in desperate need of not only a win, but just a goal. Let's just go out there and be competitive. We're going to talk about all of that coming up in just a bit. But first, I'm going to talk about our last sponsor, and that's our friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. Now, listen, the NFL's going on. NBA's on. NHL's going on. College basketball starting up. College bowl season is right around the corner. It's crazy out there with the sports landscape. And if you want to get on the action, you got to do it with our friends at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you're thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off bowl season, or if you're just joining us, NFL season, any season for that matter, kick it off with FanDuel.com/lockedon. So wrapping things up on the show, as always, I had a blast. I had a blast answering questions. I love interacting with all of you. It almost makes me feel like I'm not sitting here talking to myself the entire time, which I don't mind for the most part. But I like to have a little bit of feedback from y'all. So thank you for that question, Joshua, which I'm pretty sure probably won't be the last, which is perfectly fine. So tonight, the Lightning will finish off their road trip before they head back home against the Chicago Blackhawks. And this game probably makes – this is probably this is just a game that makes me nervous because I know it's on ESPN Plus, and I know it's not like on the main channel of ESPN, but you're damn sure it's going to be feeling like a national televised game. Like if it might as well have been on cable, because Connor Bedard, if if you weren't convinced about what kind of player he was and what kind of talent he was prior to the Lightning's last meeting, where the Lightning played like garbage, surprise, surprise, losing 5-3 at home, you better know now, because he's the real deal. Now, the record may not look great for the Blackhawks. It may not look ideal for Blackhawks fans. But best believe, especially with the way the Lightning have been playing as of late, this is a game where not only can the Lightning lose, but the Lightning could get their butts handed to them. And this is 100% a game. I think I said it. I think I tweeted it before. There was some sizzle that the Tampa Bay Lightning Twitter page tweeted out. And I kind of just want to ask why, rhetorically. In the sizzle, they had Connor Bedard, and I know everyone's going to be watching that because of him, and he's a big draw and all of that. But I just feel like that added more. I don't know. It's bad luck. I don't know why the Lightning are putting an opposing player in a sizzle, unless they got that from ESPN. I don't know what it is. I kind of just stopped watching when Bedard showed up in it. But I just feel like this is the kind of game, if it wasn't already the last game, the Connor Bedard coming out party, this is a game where I just feel like, and this is nothing new for the Lightning. Lightning just don't play well against opposing star players. And I feel like with a guy like this, where you're still kind of trying to figure him out, I could see him. He's going to score a hat trick tonight. I don't see it going any other way. I think Johansson's playing tonight, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't see anything being announced. I would imagine, since he was at practice, but he didn't participate, that it's going to be him. I know Tompkins got some work in with Vasilevsky today. But since Johansson didn't actually suit up, I would imagine he's probably going to be playing tonight. And like I said, unless it's something that's a really egregious mistake, I would imagine he's going to play well. And whatever misfortune this team might have tonight is definitely going to be on the Lightning skaters and not so much Johansson. And when I look at this game, and, if you've been a listener of the show for a while, I like to do previews, or expectations. And really my expectation for tonight is just score a goddamn goal. And excuse my language, just score a friggin' goal. That's all I ask. I'm not really looking, I'm not expecting a win. I'm not expecting a good performance, because unless the Lightning come out and play like, if they have a complete 180 from the last couple of games tonight, I think that's going to be more frustrating than them actually losing again. I just think it is, because then you're just essentially proving to the fan base as well as yourself that you are capable of doing this. Like I said, my only expectation tonight is I just want the Lightning to score a goal. It doesn't have to be even multiple goals. I just want one. I'm just tired of seeing them get shut out against non-Vezina Trophy winners or non-Vezina Trophy candidates. So let me know in the comments below what you think about that. And hopefully we'll be back tomorrow talking about a Lightning win. I'd be happy enough to be just talking about them scoring. So that's been it for the episode today. Thank you all for tuning in. And we'll be back tomorrow to talk about hopefully a win. So in the meantime, that's been it for this episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Danker. I'll talk to you in the next one.